Music made him millions before he was 20, even though he didn't even write it. He personified wild success, glamour, and status. Almost every A-list star attended his parties, but now all his former friends pretend they had nothing to do with him. Sean Combs, aka Puff, Puff Daddy, Love, P.Diddy, or simply Diddy, is a man who was recently proclaimed the richest rapper in the world, a real industry mogul, but now there's nothing left of him, and he will be remembered as a monster. His empire is crumbling right now, and the consequences will affect many. How did a young man use the death of a friend to launch his career? Is it true that he ordered the murder of Tupac Shakur and blew up Kid Cudi's car? Why did hundreds of people sue him, and why does he need so much baby oil? You're on the Enco Stories channel, and this is the story of Sean Combs' downfall. Sean Combs was born on November 4, 1969 in Harlem, New York. Long before he became one of the main figures of American show business, he was an ordinary kid growing up in a troubled neighborhood. Almost an ordinary kid. Harlem was a place of people with huge ambitions, but to achieve anything, one first had to survive. His father, Melvin Earl Combs, served in the U.S. Air Force, but he's mostly known for being an accomplice of crime boss Lucas Frank, later sentenced to 70 years in prison. During the Vietnam War, Lucas was involved in transporting illegal substances, by the way, using military aircraft. Later, Ridley Scott would make the film American Gangster about him, starring Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington. Not much is known about Sean's father other than the fact that in good times, he and his partner could make up to $1 million a day. Another known fact is that he was shot and killed in his own car when Sean was just 2 years old. Sean's mother, Janice, worked as a model, but after her husband's death, she was forced to look for new jobs, which led the family to move to Mount Vernon in upstate New York. After losing her husband, Janice Combs realized how much harder it would be to raise her children. She was very worried that Sean would repeat his father's fate, becoming a hustler and falling into a life of crime. To protect him, she decided not to tell Sean the truth about her father's death, telling him that he had died in a car accident. This lie went unnoticed for almost 20 years. As a widow raising 2 children, Sean and his sister Keisha and her own Janice worked 3 jobs to support her family, but they often lived in poverty. Due to lack of time, she was forced to leave her children with her sister in the South Bronx, the very environment she tried so hard to protect them from. It was in this neighborhood that a young Sean Combs, later known as Diddy, developed the determination that would drive his entire life. Being a kid in the South Bronx in the late 1970s was not easy. At the time, the area was considered one of the most deprived places in the United States, and living conditions were so dire that even the president of the time visited it to draw attention to its problems. Diddy later recalled one episode from his childhood that was a turning point in understanding that he needed to get out of there. One day when I was growing up, I woke up and there was 15 roaches on my face. At that moment I said, hell no. I refuse to live like this. Education was a priority in the Combs family, and Janice eventually managed to send Sean to a private school, Mount St. Michael Academy, an all-boys Catholic school with numerous awards for the quality of its education. Sean excelled in school, sang in the church choir, and was even an altar boy. In addition, Sean often participated in theater productions, and his mother recalled that what he liked most was the applause at the end of the performance. Academic success went hand in hand with athletic success. He played for the school's football team, where he earned his first nickname, Puff, all because of his habit of breathing heavily and puffing on the football field. However, despite all his mother's efforts, who tried to protect her son from the criminal world that destroyed her husband, there was another threat lurking in this school, hidden under the facade of safety and order. The fact is that Timothy Brady, the principal of this school, was accused of molesting minors. Despite all the evidence, he was not even removed from his position because none of the boys came forward publicly. So the court case was closed. This is just a theory, but it is quite possible that his behavior in the future will echo the terrible events that occurred in the past. We'll talk about this later. Outside of school, Sean Combs, aka Puff, was immersed in the street culture of New York City. His love of music was evident from an early age, and he was often seen listening to records. He also had a keen interest in fashion, influenced by his mother's past modeling career and the stylish streets of Harlem. The music of that era, including the burgeoning hip-hop scene, captured his attention. Artists like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, Run DMC, and LL Cool J were among his early influences. These hip-hop pioneers not only provided the soundtrack to his youth, but also ignited his desire to create something of his own.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
Sean's high grades allowed him to easily enter Harvard University's business school. From his successful career, it's clear that he did gain some knowledge there, but most of it was acquired through practice. At university, Puff began organizing parties for students to which he managed to lure local stars at the time, such as rapper Heavy D and musician Terry Riley. These parties, called Daddy's House, drew thousands of people and were held in large clubs and gyms, and Puff gradually became a well-known organizer who was later noticed by big players. While still in his freshman year, he was contacted by Uptown Records, one of the biggest labels responsible for R&B and hip-hop in the 90s, and was offered an unpaid internship. His duties included driving artists to recording sessions, organizing performances in various events, and doing publicity. At first, Puff worked with the band Jodeci, as well as singer Mary J. Blige. Pretty soon, the label management realized that Sean was far from an ordinary person and could be entrusted with something more than the role of a driver. Combs really had a great sense of hits, trends, and especially making connections. His first big success as a producer was the songs by Mary J. Blige, which he produced entirely and which stormed the charts in the early 90s. Originally, the album was supposed to be produced by a professional team, but they were late to the studio, so Puff sat at the sound mixer and the professional team was no longer needed. The results exceeded all expectations. The record sold 2 million copies. My talent is definitely a gift. I don't understand where it comes from. I don't play an instrument and I never went to school for music production, but I know exactly how a song should sound and how to give an artist direction. A year later, label founder Andre Harrell named Sean Combs talent director, one of the highest-ranking positions at the company, and that was in just 2 years. Combs practically did not appear at the university but continued to organize large parties simultaneously. One of them would become the first, but not the last, tragedy associated with Sean Combs' personality. On December 28, 1991, Combs hosted a charity basketball game with another member of the label, Heavy D. It took place at the City College of New York gym, which had only 2,700 seats and almost 5,000 tickets were sold. As a huge crowd gathered in the lobby, some people started to descend the stairs, thinking they would lead to the court, but the stairs led to closed office spaces. There was a stampede, resulting in the deaths of 9 young people and the serious injuries of dozens more. And although the main blame fell on the security guards who failed to properly control the crowd, Sean's reputation was seriously damaged. He even said that he thought about voluntarily taking his own life, remembering how he was left alone with the dead. I knew I'd have to explain what was going on and what happened. I was there with 9 bodies on the ground. Nobody else was there. No police, nobody. Just me and 9 bodies. No criminal charges were filed in the tragedy, but the families of the victims sued the promoters, the college, and the city, accusing them of criminal negligence. The case was settled for $4 million, of which Sean Combs paid $750,000. The victims' lawyers also claimed that Sean Combs did not stay with the deceased but left the gym immediately after the tragedy. However, Puff later resumed his parties. For the guests, they may have been just entertainment, but for Sean, these events had a different purpose. He was scouting talent, making connections, building a reputation that already had quite a few dark spots. For example, his story with Usher.
Usher look like he fresh off a goddamn plane. Usher
fresh off the garden stage. That's my brother right here from day one. We used to wake up and, pause, but like, check this out. Back in the days when he was like 10 and I was a little bit older, his older brother, we used to fight over the Frosted Flakes. You know what I'm saying? Before pause was invented. You know what I'm saying? But it's my brother for real. We used to actually wrestle off of the Frosted Flakes because he used to always get up early with me. Now he's one of the richest.
Usher was only 14 years old when he signed his first contract with the label Uptown Records, and his mentor was Sean Combs. The label decided it would be a great idea for Usher to move into Diddy's house. On the one hand, it made sense because Diddy was a great musician and had produced several hits so he could help the young artist. On the other hand, Usher was only 14. Diddy was 24, and they lived alone. That same year, Usher released his self-titled debut album, produced by P.Diddy. It peaked at number 25 on the Billboard charts and sold 500,000 copies. The album was met with mixed reviews. Usher sang about intimacy even though he was only 15 years old at the time. The label was unhappy with the result. So Usher had to go on a talent show to expand his fan base and return again a few years later. Usher hasn't said much about his life with P. Diddy. In a 2016 interview, he shared a few stories from that time that give us a sense of where the theme of his first album might have come from. There was always girls around. You'd open a door and seen somebody doing it, or several people in a room having an orgy. However, Usher's not yet commented on Combs' arrest or the sexual assault allegations. Despite his rapid rise at Uptown Records, Diddy didn't stay there long. Andre Harrell, who had made him a talent director, fired him in 1993. The reason was his short-tempered nature, which often led to conflicts with colleagues. For example, his former assistant, who worked with him at the time, recalls, "He called me bitch one time too many times. And it might not have been me, just that word, and using it in addressing any and everybody in front of other people as well. It wasn't like you were in a room and he was saying it to you one-on-one. It was like in front of the whole office and any of the artists." Harrell was a different person, more diplomatic and non-confrontational. P.Diddy says he was fired because there could only be one king left on the label. He also considers it one of the best events of his life. He gained important experience that would help him create his own label in the future. Another reason may have been a young rapper named Notorious B.I.G. Their life stories with Sean had a lot in common. Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, was also raised by a single mother who tried unsuccessfully to protect him from the street influence. She failed, and Biggie was arrested at the age of 17 and sentenced to 9 months in prison. After his release, he continued his illegal activities, but also began recording his first demos. One of these accidentally fell into P. Diddy's hands. Shortly before his release, Diddy convinced the label to sign Christopher, and they agreed. Together, they even managed to record a track for Biggie's upcoming album. Incidentally, it was one of the first times Diddy stepped up to the microphone.
Clap with my nigga, break bread and then break backs with my nigga, jack with my nigga, cock the latch with my nigga. Now.
But the label was in no hurry to release the album, as the subject matter of Biggie's tracks seemed too difficult for them. Even the concept itself, indicated in the title of the upcoming album, Ready to Die, spoke of this. For the sake of his mother and pregnant girlfriend, Biggie was ready to do anything. Rob, steal, or even something more. He was ready to do anything to survive, no matter what the cost, even if he had to die for it. That's why the label wasn't ready to release such a heavy album from someone no one knew about yet. Still, they were more focused on melodic R&B and slicker hip-hop that you can hear on the radio. The label tried to change the tone of Biggie Smalls' songs, but it didn't suit either him or Sean Combs. So Diddy left the label, along with his new friend and future legend of American hip-hop, who would suffer from this friendship later. P. Diddy made a good amount of money from his parties, but it was a pittance compared to his other income. The thing is, when he worked at the Uptown label and managed artists, he didn't think only about their income, but first of all, about his own. By 1993, P. Diddy had a large catalog of artists he'd managed to work with. He was always involved in the creative process, helping to write lyrics, performing backing vocals, and producing. So he received royalties from several sources for a single song. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of songs. That is, the more the label and artist earned, the more Diddy himself earned. As his influence grew, so did his immunity to any consequences. Remember the stampede where 9 people died? If Diddy didn't make money, they'd get rid of him, but he made millions, and with the opening of his own label, the profits went mainly to him. Shortly after his release, Sean Combs founded his own label, which would become synonymous with success, Bad Boy Records. In addition to Biggie, the label immediately signed a rapper named Craig Mack, the band's Total and 112, and singer Faith Evans. Within months of its founding, the label had released 2 albums, both produced by P. Diddy. The first was Craig Mack's project Funk Da World, which went gold that same year, selling 500,000 copies. The album was well received, but the next release would change not only the life of its author, but also the life of P. Diddy, and essentially the entire music industry at the time. This was the Notorious B.I.G's album, Ready to Die.
I'm ready. As I grab the Glock, put it to your headpiece, one in the chamber, the safety...
The success was wild. Within 2 months, the album went gold, became a classic, and overnight transformed Biggie into one of the biggest figures in hip-hop and the king of New York. Biggie quickly became one of the most beloved and iconic rappers, and Diddy became his manager, producer, and the person who was always there. The greater was Biggie's success, the more influential Diddy became. For some reason, we know much less about Biggie than about Tupac, but in fact, they are figures of the same level and status. We can make a separate issue about him because there's really a lot to talk about. Let me know in the comments if you're interested. Now we need to take a little step back to clarify what the West Coast versus East Coast war is and what P. Diddy has to do with it. Hip-hop is believed to have originated in New York, that is, on the East Coast, although in the early 90s it was Western hip-hop that was more popular. The history of this rivalry can be tracked back to 1991, when producer and rapper Suge Knight, co-founder of Death Row Records label in Los Angeles. His team included Dr. Dre, the D.O.C., Dick Griffey, and the label had artists like N.W.A. and Snoop Dogg on its roster. At that time, no one was more popular than them, but after 2 years, the situation began to level out. Diddy founded his own label, Bad Boy Records, where the iconic album Ready to Die was released. Shortly after the album's release, New York rapper Tupac Shakur moved to California and joined Suge Knight's label. Shakur was Biggie's biggest rival, with 2 major albums and starring roles in 3 films. Instead of healthy competition, tensions grew. The rappers took aim at each other in songs, culminating in the assassination attempt on Tupac Shakur in 1994. And although P. Diddy and Biggie denied the allegations, Tupac and his team blamed them, since the attack occurred when Tupac came to Biggie's studio to make peace and record a joint track. In response to the accusations, Biggie recorded the track Who Shot Ya?, where he was allegedly talking about dealers, but Tupac took it all on himself. Apparently, that's how it was intended.
Who shot ya? Separate the weak from the opsa. Leap hard to creep them Brooklyn streets.
The problems continued. Suge Knight and Puff Diddy met at a party at the Platinum House Club in Atlanta. The conflict ended in a shooting that killed Suge Knight's close friend, Jake Robles. The teams exchanged insults, disses, and threats, a classic example of which is Tupac's track where he harshly took on everyone, including Biggie, Diddy, and other rappers.
First off, fuck your bitch in the click you claim. West side when we ride, come equipped with game.
In October 1995, Tupac met Biggie's ex-wife, singer Faith Evans, at a party and agreed to pay her $25,000 to sing on one of his tracks. According to Evans, after she recorded her part, Tupac refused to pay her unless she had sex with him, and she refused. She never received the money, but she did make an unintended contribution. She can actually be heard on backing vocals in Tupac's famous diss. Of course, this angered Biggie, but subsequent events turned this conflict into a real war with victims. On September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur was shot and killed at the intersection of Flamingo Boulevard and Caval Lane in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was taken to the University Medical Center, Southern Nevada, where he died 6 days later. Suspicion, of course, fell on Biggie and his mentor Diddy. Tupac Shakur's death shocked Notorious, as it did everyone else, and he once said in an interview that he was confident that Tupac would survive, just like the last time he was shot. Faith Evans recalled her husband calling her the night of Shakur's death and crying in shock. I think it's fair to say he was probably afraid, given everything that was going on at that time. And it's true. After the Tupac's murder, Biggie hired security, but it didn't help. 6 months later, Christopher Wallace, aka Notorious B.I.G, was killed under similar circumstances. Sean Combs was with Biggie that night, but he was in another car that was driving ahead. It's likely that he was to become a victim, but there were other theories that are difficult to confirm or deny. Suspicion first fell on Suge Knight, who may have wanted revenge by killing P. Diddy's main star. Retired Los Angeles police detective Greg Kading, who worked for 3 years on the task force, claimed that the rapper was shot by Wardell Poochie Faust, Suge Knight's partner, who was shot a few months later. Kading believes that Knight hired Poochie through his girlfriend, Teresa Swan, to kill Wallace as revenge for Tupac's death, who Kading claims was killed on Combs' orders. Both deaths remain mysteries, although the names of the direct killers have long been known and all met the same fate. But the clients remain in the shadows. The confrontation between the Western and Eastern clans was put to an end by a joint press conference between Snoop Dogg and Sean Combs, which took place in 1997 on The Steve Harvey Show. At it, the artists gave up their previous claims in order to find a, quote, better way to solve the problem.
Me and my man Snoop was saying, y'all, there ain't no East Coast, West Coast beef.
I swear. We ain't coming to talk about nothing behind us. We come to talk about what's ahead of us.
Yeah.
We here to make a difference, you know what I'm saying? So we want y'all to stay in school and keep y'all heads in y'all books.
No doubt. Knowledge is power, y'all.
In her 2000 book, The Murder of Biggie Smalls, investigative journalist Kathy Scott suggested that the murders of Wallace and Shakur may have been motivated by financial gain for record companies. It's a well-known fact. Dead rappers sell better. And as cynical as it may sound, it makes sense when you consider what P. Diddy did next. Notorious B.I.G. was shot and killed shortly before his second album was due to be released. So what was the first thing P. Diddy did after his close friend died? 16 days after the murder, P. Diddy released Notorious's album Life After Death, which debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. We'll tell you more about the album in the video about Christopher Wallace himself, but here we'll focus on the promotion strategy, which simultaneously glorified the legacy of not only Biggie, but also P. Diddy. 2 singles from the album were a huge success, the song Hypnotize, as well as the song Mo Money, Mo Problems, in which P. Diddy himself participated. Both singles reached number 1 on the Hot 100 chart, which made Wallace the first artist to achieve this feat posthumously.
I know you rather see me die than see me fly. I call all the shots, rip all the spots.
This album, not without Diddy's help, brought pop and gangsta rap as close as possible. References to violence and drug dealing remain, as did all the gangster rhetoric, but the overall style changed to a cleaner, more optimistic and mainstream one. Notorious is often called the initiator of this transition, since he was one of the first mainstream rappers to release albums that sounded on the radio, but told not-so-family-friendly stories. The album sold 690,000 copies in its first week, and in 2000 was certified diamond, meaning 5 million copies, making it one of the best-selling rap albums of all time. Despite the public mourning, Diddy did not grieve for long, and in the same year, he launched his own career and released his first album under the pseudonym Puff Daddy. It was called No Way Out, and was not particularly memorable. Although it sold 500,000 copies in its first week, the most valuable thing were the verses of the late Biggie that Diddy used for his recordings. The truth is, no one wanted to listen to Diddy's rap. On Spotify, 27 years later, songs featuring other artists have 50, 60, or 70 million streams, while songs featuring Diddy have tens of times fewer. Diddy presented the album as an internal reflection of his heartbreak after his close friend's death, saying that it had a huge impact on him. But that's not entirely true.
Check it out. Seems like yesterday we used to rock the show. I laced the track, you locked the flow.
Combs was nominated for 5 awards at the 40th Grammy Awards for No Way Out. He won for Best Rap Album and Best Duo/Group Performance. Of the 17 tracks, only 4 were solo, with the rest featuring the late Biggie, Jay-Z, Lil' Kim, and others. On September 7, 2000, the album was certified 7 times platinum in the United States. Puff Daddy entered the new millennium as one of the most commercially successful artists in the world, and things only got better. It was also around this time that Sean changed his name once again, now officially known as P. Diddy. When it comes to Sean Combs, name changes are almost as common as scandals. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, and even Love. It seems like every time his image gets tarnished, he tries to freshen it up with a new name. Everything worked for his recognition. A successful label, legendary albums of his signees, scandals, and also roles in films. In 2001, he starred as a drug dealer in the movie Made. He also appeared in Monsters Ball and also produced the soundtrack for the Oscar-winning film Training Day. But the millennium also ended with another high-profile criminal case. On December 27, 1999, Combs and his then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez were at a Manhattan club when a shooting broke out. After a police investigation, Combs and fellow rapper Shine were arrested for weapons violations. Combs was charged with 4 counts of weapons possession and bribing his driver, Wardell Fenderson, to say the gun was his. Surprisingly, Combs was not found guilty on all counts, while his friend Shine was convicted on 5 of the 8 counts and sentenced to 10 years in prison. This is another guy whose life was completely ruined because of Diddy. But who is he? Jamal Barrow, aka Shine, moved from Belize to the US as a child. He lived with his mother, worked various jobs, and freestyled on the streets until he was introduced to P. Diddy in the late 90s. He immediately saw Shine's potential and signed him to his label. He gave him $2 million in advance, 3 cars, and a new house in exchange for a 5-album deal. Overnight, Shine became a huge star and moved from his mom's trailer to Beverly Hills. Unfortunately, he didn't get to enjoy his success because of that shooting incident, and Shine ended up in jail. It completely turned this guy's life around. After 10 years in prison, he quit rapping, returned to his homeland, and became a high-ranking politician in the justice system. Here's how Shine now speaks about his idol and mentor.
I was defending him, and he turned around and called witnesses to testify against me, and he contributed. He pretty much sent me to prison. So that is the context by which you must always describe that relationship. Yes, I forgave.
As you can imagine, this is far from the first and the last criminal case that Diddy got away with. But we wouldn't be making this video if it had continued like this. Diddy wasn't content with being a music mogul. He wanted to influence how people lived, how they dressed, and how they celebrated their success. In 1998, he launched his clothing line, Sean John, which became a cultural phenomenon. Sean John wasn't just about clothes. It was about selling a lifestyle. The brand represented luxury, success, and, of course, status. Whether it was oversized leather jackets or velour tracksuits, Sean John wasn't just a fashion label. It was a statement. If you wore these clothes, you were part of the elite. Or at least that's what Diddy wanted you to believe. But clothes were just the first step. Diddy had bigger plans. He wanted to be present in every aspect of people's lives. So he promoted his style, his lifestyle, and sold it to people through brands. And so Ciroc vodka was born, one of the smartest business moves of his career. He made the brand his own, turning it into a household name. Suddenly, Ciroc was the vodka of choice at every party, every club, and every VIP event. If you were celebrating something important, you were celebrating it with Ciroc. Diddy then went into the media where he shaped trends. Revolt TV is a digital cable television network and music-focused media company that Combs founded with his partner Andy Schuon. TV was his attempt to control the narrative, to give hip-hop its own platform, free from the mainstream networks. When we talk about Diddy's legacy, we can't forget his music videos. They weren't just videos, they were events. Big-budget, cinematic productions that exuded luxury, style, and excess that made you wonder, is this a music video or a Hollywood blockbuster? There were helicopters, yachts, extravagant mansions, and of course, Diddy himself dancing in every scene looking like he owned the world. Well, in his opinion, he did.
Sean on the hot track, melt like it's hot wax. Put it out, all the stores, bet you can shop that.
It all worked, and in 2002, Fortune magazine ranked Combs 12th on its list of the, quote, 40 best entrepreneurs under 40. Diddy's videos didn't just sell music, they sold a lifestyle that every artist and fan aspired to be a part of. The culture of glitz, the excess, the sunglasses indoors, and somehow, Diddy made it all seem normal. The man who built an empire from nothing wasn't just selling music, clothes, or alcohol. He was selling a piece of himself, and for a long time, the world couldn't get enough of it. Take, for example, his infamous white parties, exclusive events that absolutely all the stars dreamed of getting into. What really happened there? We'll probably find out after the trial, but we already know some details. Diddy's white parties took place every year from 1998 to 2009. First in the Hamptons, and then in other exclusive places in New York, St. Tropez, or Beverly Hills. The strict dress code for Diddy's white party required guests to wear all white, and the party's decor also followed a white theme. Diddy later told Oprah Winfrey in 2006 that this was done in order to, quote, take away everyone's image and put us all in the same color and on the same level. The first party was held on September 7, 1998 in East Hampton, New York. Diddy invited 200 people, mostly R&B and hip-hop artists, actors, and celebrities, to a barbecue at his new home in the Hamptons. I had the craziest mix of guests. Some of my boys from Harlem, Leonardo DiCaprio after he just finished Titanic. I had socialites there and relatives from down south. There were 200 people sitting out here, just having a down-home cookout. Diddy's parties certainly had a cinematic bent. For his 2004 white party, Diddy flew in by helicopter straight from the Broadway show of A Raisin in the Sun. The parties started in the afternoon and continued late into the night. In the early hours, there was a more family-oriented atmosphere. There are photos of Diddy and his then-wife, Kim Porter, holding their twin children at the white party in 2007. At the same party, Diddy posed with his young sons. This open part of the party took place during the day, but there was another one where not everyone was invited. The investigation claims that alcohol and heavy substances were consumed at the so-called freak-offs, under the influence of which Sean Combs forced guests to orgy. He himself did not always participate in this, but for example, could film the process on video. Considering the number of devices that were found in his house, Diddy had compromising information for all of Hollywood. All the rooms were equipped with cameras that were constantly filming. Insider reports that Diddy had a staff of sex workers for this part of the party. These girls, who seemed very young, stood out from the rest because they were not dressed in designer clothes and did not have any jewelry. There is an assumption that at freak-offs, guys and girls were deliberately, quote, pumped with prohibited substances. There were cases of sex without mutual consent and a real orgy. No matter how it sounds, the night could last for several days. It's likely that the participants were not allowed to leave the estate until the victims were no longer bruised. To the public, Diddy was a true showman, and for years no one questioned that. Why? Because he wasn't just a party host, he was the host of an entire era. He always smiled, was always confident, always gave the world exactly what he wanted you to see. But as with most things in the celebrities world, the bigger the smile, the more secrets it can hide. No matter what was going on, everyone kept quiet, and Diddy's career continued, his fortune and influence only growing. In 2005, Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people of the year. Combs starred in the film Carlito's Way, Rise to Power, received his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and released the album Press Play, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart in the United States.
What it is, I'm back in the building. Security strap still stacking a million. Stunt with a stallion.
As of 2010, Diddy was the richest rapper in the world, with a net worth of nearly $500 million. His businesses, endorsement deals, clothing line, and extensive artists' catalog all made him the richest and most influential. But at that moment, a strange story happened. It's the story of the friendship between Diddy and Justin Bieber, who was only 15 years old. This story is reminiscent of his friendship with Usher, but seems much more sinister. What actually happened between them is not known for sure, but it's still considered one of the most mysterious moments in Diddy's career. When Justin Bieber first entered the music industry at the age of 15, his popularity grew exponentially. Soon after, he found himself in Diddy's company, who became his mentor. No one would have thought of this friendship, but with all the accusations, some of Justin and Diddy's old videos look and sound disturbing.
Man, you good?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, young brother, everything's good?
Everything's
Selling
great.
out arenas and everything? Starting to act different, huh? You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you try to get in contact with me, through all my, partners and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But you never really got my number, so.
Neither Diddy nor Justin Bieber have commented on the matter, with some suggesting it's simply part of a conspiracy theory surrounding Diddy's case, while others are convinced Justin Bieber was his victim. The internet was particularly shaken when a Justin Bieber song surfaced online in which he sings about losing his soul at P. Diddy's party.
Lost myself at a Diddy party. Didn't know that's how it goes.
It went viral, garnering millions of views, but it was apparently generated by artificial intelligence, and Bieber himself has disavowed it. Justin has completely distanced himself from the story of Diddy's arrest, and now hardly appears in public. In addition, he has health problems. In 2022, he was diagnosed with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, which makes half of his face numb, and because of which he cannot perform for the time being. Over the years, P. Diddy devoted less and less time to his own work. Since 2006, he has released only 2 albums. In 2010, he created the superband Dream Team, which consisted of such artists as Rick Ross, DJ Khaled, Fat Joe, Busta Rhymes, Red Cafe, and Fabulous. Together, they released their only album, which is unlikely to be called Super because it was not particularly noticed.
I hate that song. I always feel like they're talking to me when it comes on.
Despite the lack of new music, Diddy was financially sound. In 2017, Forbes listed his earnings and put the figure at $130 million in 1 year. As of mid-2023, his fortune was estimated at $1 billion, making him the second richest rapper after Jay-Z. Over the years, his scandalous reputation, rumors, and speculation began to overshadow the image he'd worked so hard to build. But despite the rumors, he continued to seek more fame, influence, and attention. And then, everything changed dramatically when Cassie Ventura, a singer Diddy had been dating for over 10 years, filed a 35-page lawsuit against him in November 2023. Before moving on to the next topic, which demonstrates the full depth of this personality's downfall, please subscribe to the channel, like, and ring the notification bell. We try to delve into the biographies of completely different personalities in detail, so we would be grateful for feedback. Thank you, and let's continue. This lawsuit instantly separated the rumors and provided concrete details that revealed Diddy's true nature. It was the final nail in the coffin. Diddy had long had a reputation as an exploitative, selfish, narcissistic businessman who could easily cheat or even steal from his own customers. But now, with the filing of the lawsuit, an even deeper level of evil has been revealed. In 2024, Diddy was arrested by the Department of Homeland Security after a series of lawsuits that had been filed against him all year. Apparently, no one was surprised by this arrest. He'd long been surrounded by strange stories, questionable relationships with teenagers such as Justin Bieber and Usher, rumors surrounding the mysterious deaths of Biggie and Tupac, and more. But suspicions are just suspicions. Arrest, especially in such a structure, is a completely different matter. The moment the federal government accused him of human trafficking, it became clear. Diddy was not just a bad guy, he was truly evil. If Diddy himself had written his biography, we'd consider him the best man in the world. A huge amount of his resources were directed to creating such an image. Moreover, he considered himself a messiah, and in one interview stated that his main goal was to save the black race.
3 years ago, God made my mission and my purpose clear. And my mission and my purpose is to do whatever and play whatever role that I have to play into saving the black race, number one.
These are the words of someone who framed a close friend who got 10 years in prison, someone who blew up Kid Cudi's car, someone who manipulated Usher and forced his wife to have sex with other men. But first things first. Despite the accusations, it did not affect his status and position in show business for a long time. In 2023, he was awarded the Key to New York, and earlier he received an award at the MTV Video Music Awards for his new album. To untangle this tangle of violence, you need to focus on those who encountered his violence in the first place, his women. The long list of women he was linked to are the people he spent the most time with, and they should know him best. Diddy was in a relationship with model Kim Porter, whom he dated from 1994 to 2007. He later dated singer Cassie Ventura from 2007 to 2018. He's also been in relationships with Jennifer Lopez, Cameron Diaz, Young Miami, and others at some point. Kim Porter is perhaps the most prominent woman in Diddy's life and in this business. She met Diddy while working as a secretary at his first label, Uptown Records, and they were together on and off for almost 15 years, during which they had 3 children. Kim was a successful actress and a model, but her life was cut short in 2018 when she died of pneumonia. Diddy was devastated. Or so he wanted everyone to think. If you read his Twitter feed from that time, it's all about mournful posts about his wife. Her death raises a lot of questions. Kim Porter was 47 years old. She lived in a prestigious area of Los Angeles, where an ambulance arrives in a few minutes, so why did she die at home and not in the hospital? This is all a conspiracy theory for now, but there are a few reasons why she should disappear, of course, according to Diddy's twisted logic. Rumor has it that she was writing a book about the true nature of her relationship with Sean Combs, which could have put an end to his career, even then. This memoir was indeed published in 2024, a few months before P. Diddy's arrest. The book did cause a sensation, but it was quickly removed from sale due to complaints from Kim's children and P. Diddy himself. They stated that it was a fake and that their mother never wrote any memoirs during her lifetime. The memoir has a loud title, Kim's Lost Words, A Journey for Justice from the Other Side. But the author is listed as someone else, Jamal T. Millwood. In real life, the man's name is Todd Christopher Guz, and he claims that Kim passed the information on to friends before her death on a flash drive, and he simply edited the text. The book contains many of the things that P. Diddy is accused of today, that he forced Kim to participate in orgies when she was already pregnant, or that Diddy organized the murder of Tupac because he refused him a romantic relationship. In the book, Kim also claims that the father of her children has a sexual orientation towards very young people. The names Bow Wow, Usher, and Justin Bieber are mentioned. And it also seemed to Kim that Combs tried to corrupt her son Quincy, whom he raised from the age of 3. But these were just disturbing thoughts that she found no confirmation for. The little book ends like a Hollywood thriller with the words, "He caught me." This is exactly the message Kim sent to her friends, if you believe the book. The authenticity of the memoirs has not yet been established. It's quite possible that an unknown journalist simply decided to make money on sensationalism and invented these memoirs, but if it turns out that they were true, Sean Combs will have big problems, although he already has a lifetime ahead of him. Whether Kim died of a disease is a mystery that will likely be re-examined, but even so, it's only the beginning. After Diddy was arrested, the press began to closely monitor Jennifer Lopez, his ex-girlfriend. She was present at the shooting that landed rapper Shine in prison for 10 years, so it's possible she might know more. But at a recent event, she abruptly left an autograph session when asked about her relationship with Diddy. In general, she's been steadily ignoring and avoiding questions about her ex-lover lately. Another case is Cassie Ventura, a successful model and singer who was the first to file a lawsuit against P. Diddy. This lawsuit began with P. Diddy's speech at the BET Awards, where he thanked his loved ones as well as Cassandra Ventura herself for supporting him through the dark times. But the truth is, she was there during the dark times because she had no other choice. If we summarize the entire statement, we learn that for 10 years, she endured Diddy's cruel behavior and his perverted demands. Why didn't she leave? Because when she tried to do it for the first time, he beat her until she bled and locked her in the house. For a detailed description of what Diddy forced her to do, our channel might even be deleted, but some things need to be said. Sean Combs had complete control over Ventura's life, not only financially, but also through the illegal substances she had to use, especially during the parties. We know that these parties had 2 stages. The first, which was general, where people just socialized and had fun, but there was also a second one. It was called Freak Off. That is, when Diddy got rid of all the extras and only selected guests remained for exclusive entertainment. They were accompanied by the use of prohibited substances, and the guests were entertained by hired sex workers. It's likely that the investigation will be able to prove that not all of them were adults. In 2012, Cassie allegedly tried to leave Diddy for another man, a young rapper named Kid Cudi. In response, he hinted to Ventura that Cudi's car might accidentally burn down. And a few days later, Cudi and his friends heard an explosion and saw his car engulfed in flames. Cudi and Cassie were shocked. They realized what Diddy was capable of. Although Diddy denied any connection to the incident, Cudi later came forward to confirm the story in Cassie's support. Diddy paid $30 million the day after the lawsuit was filed and released a scathing statement that he and Ventura had resolved the matter amicably. However, that wasn't the end of the story. The snowball just kept growing. More lawsuits would be filed against Diddy in the coming months. One of the most disturbing came from Rodney Jones, a Grammy-nominated producer who worked closely with Diddy for 14 months. Jones alleged that Diddy groped him by the genitals without asking permission, forced him to hire prostitutes, and engage in sexual acts with them. Jones also claims that Diddy tried to, quote, induce him to have sex with another man, allegedly claiming that it was normal practice in the music industry. The lawsuit alleges that Diddy tried to control Jones by promising him rewards, fame, and access to stars and label bosses, as well as more than one Grammy, but for certain services. In July 2023, Jones claims at a party held at Diddy's California home, he was forced to drink a shot of tequila laced with illegal substances. He then blacked out and woke up at 4 a.m. the next morning, naked, with sex workers and Diddy sleeping next to him. Rodney Jones spent 14 months with P. Diddy, working on his album. He was in the closest circle of friends and acquaintances, but most importantly, he was a witness to everything that happened behind closed doors. And even if we assume that this is also not true, the pendulum has already begun to swing. A few months before P. Diddy was brought in handcuffs, his career was effectively over. But this was far from the last lawsuit. There are now more than 120 of them, and apparently, there will only be more. You can also ask the question, maybe people just made up the charges to make money. In Hollywood, such stories are not uncommon, but here you can turn to the personality of the lawyer who represents all the victims. His name is Tony Busby. He has a good reputation and has been involved in similar cases for many years. In addition to the well-known lawsuits, he says that about 100 more lawsuits are planned, including from minor victims. A few years before this case, he'd represented NFL player Deshaun Watson in court, who was accused of more than 20 counts of sexual harassment. In addition, Diddy was investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They arrested him not because of rumors, but because of evidence they'd been gathering against him for almost a year. On their official website, you can find statistics that indicate that the feds almost never lose their cases. That is, if they arrest someone, it means that the evidence is reinforced concrete. But there is a 1% of people who manage to get away with it. It seems that Diddy is not that case. It was the feds who put people like the maniac Charles Manson or the drug lord El Chapo in prison. Also, they conducted the search in P. Diddy's house, during which they found weapons, ammunition, almost 100 data storage devices, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil. To understand exactly how it was used during the parties, well, turn on your imagination. The case is officially called United States of America versus Sean Combs, and he was charged with 3 counts: racketeering and conspiracy, human trafficking, and involvements of persons in prostitution. If Diddy really filmed everything that happened at these freak-off parties, it's scary to imagine what exactly could be in that footage, and who exactly. On May 17, 2024, an 8-year-old video surfaced online showing Diddy spanking the same Cassie Ventura with whom he supposedly resolved things amicably. The recording was likely found during a search of his home. The next day, Diddy issued an apology saying he was unforgivable and that it had only happened once. He'd probably hoped that would be the end of it, but Diddy had yet to realize the scale of the disaster that awaited him. Currently, there are more than 20 lawsuits alleging sexual abuse by Combs and his accomplices, including his own son. Let's take a look at some of them to better understand who we're talking about today. For example, Talia Graves was dating a producer at Bad Boy Records in 2001. Combs took advantage of her relationship with a coworker to lure her into a recording studio alone, where they gave her a drink, after which she woke up tied up and realized that they had a non-consensual sexual encounter. The entire incident was recorded on video, which they then used to blackmail the victim. Ashley Parham alleged in a lawsuit that Combs sexually harmed her using a remote control in March 2018 after she accused him of, quote, being involved in the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. 5 more lawsuits were filed on October 20th, all accusing Combs of sexual harassment or non-consensual sex between 2000 and 2022. One of the plaintiffs was just 13 years old when she was at a party and found high on illegal substances. The list goes on, but the cases are all similar: illegal substances, violence, threats, and blackmail. The silence from celebrities after his arrest was truly astonishing. He knew almost every famous person in America. They went to his parties, invited him to their shows, mentioned him in songs and movies, and he has photos with all the big politicians. Strangely enough, almost no one reacted or took his side. If an innocent person, your friend whom you've known for 20 years, was accused of such terrible things, would you remain silent? Of course, you can't say that a joint photo with Diddy is proof that someone's involved in human trafficking or participated in orgies, but there are some people who were with Diddy all these years. For example, Clive Davis, president of the Columbia Records label, founder of Arista Records, who opened the world to Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, Bruce Springsteen, Whitney Houston, and many others. When Diddy was fired from his first job, it was Clive Davis who financed Diddy's next project, giving him a $50 million advance to start Bad Boy Records. This in itself was not suspicious, but for years it was rumored that Davis had initially offered Diddy these opportunities on the condition that they would have an intimate relationship. Nothing's been confirmed, but Clive Davis's character is often questioned. For example, his appearance at a party at the same time that his artist Whitney Houston had just been found dead in the same building. Now, Clive Davis is 92 years old, and he could become a valuable witness in this case, although it's quite possible he'll become a suspect. Can an empire hardly consist only of an emperor? Obviously, the defendants in the lawsuits will be not only P. Diddy, but also his associates, bodyguards, assistants, label colleagues, and many others. But there is one star couple who was also touched by this whole story. We're talking about Jay-Z and Beyonce. Around these names, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that will probably never come true, but still, there's something suspicious here. Jay-Z and Diddy became friends in the 90s and agreed that both wanted something more than just rap. They were businessmen and both were building their own brands. Jay-Z caught sight of singer Aliyah, who was a young star. With each album, she was only gaining popularity. She was predicted to become world famous. so she was not very interested in Jay-Z, who was a hearty 30. Moreover, she was only 18. Realizing that nothing was shining for him, Jay-Z switched to another, no less promising singer whom we now know today as Beyoncé. There is a theory that Jay-Z was ready to do anything to make Beyoncé number one, even if it meant eliminating competitors. This version is supported by the mysterious and sudden death of Aaliyah in 2001. She and her crew were filming a music video in the Bahamas. When the shoot was over, they decided to return to Miami to shoot a few more scenes. To make things go quickly, they rented a small plane, which Aaliyah initially refused to board. In the photos, it really doesn't look very reliable, considering how much equipment they loaded into it. The crew decided she was just tired and nervous. They gave her a sedative, after which she fell asleep, and she was literally carried onto the plane, which crashed immediately after takeoff. The singer died on the spot. The cause of the plane crash was not only an overloaded plane, but also a pilot with an expired license, who was also found to have banned substances in his blood. This is how the story of one of the most promising American singers ended. There is a theory that they're also involved in Michael Jackson's death, but we'll leave such statements to conspiracy theorists because it's impossible to confirm. But here's the last one for you. Beyoncé was born on September 4th, Sean Combs on November 4th, Jay-Z on December 4th, and the latter released a music album called 444 in 2017. Rumor has it that this may also have something to do with their conspiracy and bloody path to success. Whatever the case, we can only wait. Tony Busby, a lawyer in the Sean Combs case who represents the victims, said that the investigation has a huge list of Combs' accomplices that will, quote, shock the public. It will be made public after investigators verify all the information. The truth is that there were people who warned us all along about Diddy's true nature. It would be unfair not to mention them. One of the first to try to tell the truth about Diddy was TV host Wendy Williams, Hunter. Now 60 years old, she suffers from progressive dementia, but she managed to tell us something. Since the 90s, Wendy has worked on the radio, hosting her own program in which she discussed hip-hop news, and not only. She was fired in 1998 shortly after she hinted that Sean Combs might be homosexual. One day, she came across a paparazzi photo of a man pulling down Diddy's shorts while he was on vacation in Cancun, but she was fired before she could even talk about it.
There was a radio personality once upon a time. Her name was Wendy Williams, and she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such.
She was literally blacklisted and couldn't find a job for a long time. Eventually, she managed to create her own show, and once even Diddy came to see it. He was visibly nervous, but Wendy was nervous too. You can see how embarrassed she was when Diddy said he met her son backstage.
The mother of a now 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Who I met backstage.
He did?
He's a great young man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You represent a lot.
Another person who was always suspicious of Diddy was 50 Cent. They were not friends. They only occasionally crossed paths at events, and once Diddy offered Curtis something very strange.
Like he said something to me one time, a long time ago, at Chris Lighty's wedding. He told me he'd take me shopping. I looked at him like, what'd you just say? Let me move, man, before I do something. You gonna make me mess up the wedding.
Oh, that's a nice gesture.
Let me get out of no, dude, take me. That's what a guy says to him.
Later, 50 would write a diss in which he would go after Diddy and also accuse Diddy of knowing Biggie's killer but doing nothing. 50 was also not seen at Combs' parties, according to him. He never liked their energy. 50 said that he was too normal for those parties. And in addition, 50 will become one of the authors of the upcoming documentary about the life and crimes of Diddy, which he's currently filming. Eminem also talked about Diddy throughout his career. He'd been making fun of him since the last millennium, when Diddy was just starting to build his empire. No one took his words seriously because it's difficult to find a person whom Eminem would not make fun of. However, in 2018, Eminem released the song Kill Shot. It was a diss to the rapper Machine Gun Kelly, who, by the way, is still signed to Diddy's label. There were these lines.
Got skills, but Kel's the day you put out a hits. The day Diddy admits that he put the hit out, they got pot kill.
In the same song, he jokingly apologized, but in the recent one, he made fun of Diddy again with an interesting play on words, which is difficult to convey, but its essence is that he called Diddy a sexual aggressor, only veiled. The song, by the way, was released before the arrest.
He didn't just spell the word rapper and leave out a P.diddy. Yep, R.P. rest in peace. Biggie and Pac, both of y'all should be living. Yep, but I...
The biggest hit was J. Cole's song She Knows, which came out 10 years ago. You've heard it 100%.
She knows, and I know she knows.
Before the release of this song, there was a conflict between J. Cole and P.Diddy. They met at some after party where Diddy decided to pour a cocktail over Kendrick Lamar's head for lines that didn't even concern him. J. Cole stood up for Kendrick. The conflict ended, but the next song released was She Knows. What is the song about? In general, the song is about betrayals that the lyrical hero resorts to, although his girlfriend knows about them. But behind the layer of this story may be another one. Why in a song about betrayal does Cole mention exactly those stars who are no longer there, but whose deaths can be associated with Jay-Z and Beyonce, Aaliyah, Michael Jackson, and Lisa Lopes, who died in a car accident? In addition, the phrase "she knows," which is repeated in the song, resembles a reference to Beyonce's real surname, Knowles. Recently, they say about this guy that he's gone crazy, but Kanye West was one of the first to talk about Jay-Z and Beyonce, although they've been friends for a long time.
I've been sent here to give y'all my truth, even at the risk of my own life.
Also, one cannot help but remember his video for the song Famous. These shots are very reminiscent of something. It looks like some kind of party. Sean Combs is currently in a Brooklyn jail where he's suffering terribly from prison food. Breakfast is cereal, fruit, and a pastry. Lunch consists of hamburgers, baked fish or beef tacos, fried eggs, and biscuits. Dinner is chicken fajitas, pasta, and roast beef. There are even heart-healthy foods and vegetarian options such as lentils, tofu, and baked beans. There's so much material on the P. Diddy case that the hearing will not take place until May of next year, and until then, Sean Combs will somehow have to put up with tofu and hamburgers. The story of Sean Combs could be an example of an incredible success, when a kid from a poor neighborhood turns into a business mogul and a genius producer thanks to his talent. Instead, it's the story of a man who became so fascinated with power that he believed in his own omnipotence and inviolability. When we started making this video, we planned to find the moment when Sean Combs turned into a monster. But the more we learned about him, the clearer it became that that moment never happened. The world simply refused to notice the red flags smeared with the blood of his victims. The saddest thing is that he was not alone, and probably, soon enough, the names of all those people who were nearby, having fun at parties and not noticing the evil that was happening in the next rooms will appear. So, while we wait for the finale of this story, you can watch our other videos, mostly about good people. We'll be grateful for your subscription and like, and in the meantime, thank you for watching, and see you again.